started.
Stay, Jensen.
And see what we can knock out this morning. In our monthly department meeting. In 10 minutes, we'll be done in 10 minutes. All right, I'll try to be done in 10 minutes. For me, my part. We got other parts. Mike Burnett, would you please open up in prayer?
Thank you again for the responsibilities, board that lie ahead of us when it comes to just coaching, teaching athletes, and cultivating different speakers. So we'll find out today, live victoriously in athletics and in life. So give us the wisdom to seek you daily, to shine a light that leads people to your name.
Hey, so I gave you an assignment last time. You remember what the assignment was, Colleen? What was the assignment I gave you last time?
Really, you were going to ask him that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you.
I gave you this because you didn't bring it.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone know what the assignment was? Remember, Karen, how'd you do? How you doing?
Good.
Can you give it to me?
No.
All right, here it is. There it is. Mission statement. We build relationships and inspire transformation of student athletes to experiencing Christ and cultivating competitive excellence, equipping men and women who are ready to serve and prepared to lead. What I think I told you last time is I want us to dive into this each time before our meeting, just dig a little bit deeper, help you understand it, know it better. If you remember last time, we looked at relationships. I said there are 4 components to relationships that hopefully will describe the zoo-specific athletics relationships. You remember what those 4 components were? Anybody? You don't have to be in order. Accountability. Yeah, I was kind of big on that one. What else?
Listening.
Listening. We're going to listen to each other. We're going to hold each other accountable, and we're going to listen to each other as we're doing that. Okay? The other 2 are real easy. We're going to encourage. One more. What's the most obvious thing? What does every relationship got to have? Love. There you go. So yeah, we talked about that. Love, encourage, hold each other accountable, listen to one another. Today, we're going to focus on transformation. What does that mean when we say we inspire transformation of student athletes? I've asked Mike if he would share with us for 10, 12 minutes about concept of transformation. When we talk about transforming student athletes, when we talk about ourselves being transformed through a relationship with Jesus Christ, what does that look like? So I want to hand this over to Mike, and Mike, let you share with us.
Well, I'm a little embarrassed. I thought you said transportation.
Yeah.
Really prepared for this. Boy, that is a big word. So Gary walks in the office and says, Mike, would you do something next week on transformation? I'm like, that's that big word that we all have heard. We're not sure what to do with it. And so I said, sure. And he goes, yeah, with just a short little devotional. And I'm thinking, all right. He says, how about 5 to 7 minutes? And I'm like, really? You know, as he walks out, and this is no disrespect, but I'm thinking, how many times in my own life did I give the word transformation about 5 to 7 minutes? Okay, so it began to make me think, even in my own life, what does that look like? And I began to understand, what does transformation mean? You know, and how is one to be transformed? You know, I kept thinking and going back to, well, maybe it's when we were converted. There was a transformation there for sure. You know, I'm like, okay, great. But is that where it is supposed to end? Is that where it ended? You know? And then I thought, well, if I'm going to talk about our mission statement, I better read the mission statement. I know it was presented to us in July and was challenged a month ago, and I didn't do my homework at that time. So I went looking for it and ended up finding it. And it's still such a scary word. I mean, I remember reading it again and going, man, what does this word really mean? And as I thought about it, it has always been a scary word for me. I mean, I always thought that it's like people that like wear suits, you know, create words like this, you know, and that I'm supposed to eventually figure it out and hand it down to the people around me. And so I began to go, all right, so what does it look like? So I read it, and again, just kind of paraphrasing, as you already heard, is to be able to cultivate difference makers who live victoriously in athletics and in life. So I kind of processed that really quickly, and I went, all right, so how am I to do that? You know, and as I dug in a little deeper to the mission statement, it goes on to say that we do that by building relationships that inspire transformation. Wow, that now it absolutely makes sense. So then I said, all right, if we're supposed to live by this, and this is what we say we're going to do, I took it a step further and went, I better at least look at the definition of it. So the definition of transformation is a complete or major, it says, change in appearance. And then it goes on to say that it is an act, a process, or instance of transformation or being transformed. And then again, I thought about, well, how do we do that? And if we're going back to the mission statement that calls us to be in those relationships, it's just that. It is a relationship that we're called to build with one another. And that is the premise of what we do as coaches. You know, and I'm positive every single one of us in this room do that. And hopefully it carries on over into the classroom and into our lives. And so I remember thinking, well, okay, that means that I'm to model this. But I also get a chance to see it modeled everywhere else because, you know, if in fact some of us, you know, say myself, if I stopped being transformed at kind of when I accepted Christ for the first time, then are people really going to be attracted to me? You know, am I going to inspire that transformation? So again, it reminded me as Gary walked out of the office that day, it's like, how much time am I spending basically on myself in Scripture, talking to people, trying to be transformed? And it reminded me that, you know, it's another scary thing because if I'm calling myself to be in relationship with our students, the other big scary word here is vulnerability, you know, because if we really need to tell our story to help inspire transformation, that means, guess what? You're going to find out about me, about you. You know, you get to reveal who you are. And by that, somehow, some way, then we get to take it that next step that says, well, and here's how I overcame it, and here's where the hope is. And so that transformation happened for each one of us. But unfortunately, sometimes it stopped years ago. Because again, it's that big scary word that I'm not sure what to do. But am I just supposed to be the one to transform others? You know, and if I am I constantly being a learner myself and being transformed? So relationships take time, you know, and as you know, as coaches, you know, and administrators, I mean, that is something that's got to be intentional. Like, how are we going to do it? And it's not just in our coaching, although our athletes are watching us and hopefully emulating what we do, but it also takes a step further. And what we started doing in track years back is we have kids tell their testimony to their peers, you know, just like, hey, we don't make them, but when they do, it just kind of reveals this kind of aha moment that we were all created differently, we all think differently, we all grew up differently, and we all had a different kind of a transformation. But the thing that we tend to do with transformation is we think that our transformation is the only way. And in a sense, it kind of rolls over into the church. If that makes any sense, you know, to go to churches that like, hey, here's what we believe, and here's how we've been transformed. But you don't fit that, and you know, we'll feel that in the church, and we just kind of slip away. But it took it a little bit further and saying, you know what? I kept thinking of the two words, and it's not up there. If we are called to cultivate difference makers in athletics, but we're doing it, and it says to cultivate difference makers who live victoriously in athletics. And I was reminded, like, athletics is so works-driven, goal-driven, you know? We're just going out there every day and we're like, you know, we're pounding the pavement. We want to be the best. We're asking for excellence. We're asking for perfection. And for the most part, we dig in to research that allow us to be a better coach. Therefore, we will build men and women that will succeed at this sport that we teach them, right? So that was a given. But then I kept thinking about to be able to live victoriously in life, what does that mean? As we're sending them off and teaching them and cultivating that, I guess the separation there has to be reminded that that's not works driven. Because we ultimately just have to separate those two, saying, yeah, we want you to win, we want you to be perfect here, but guess what? grace has to be extended as we think about transforming kids' lives. And I say, we've all got those stories of like somebody who just didn't extend grace. And so the reminder with that piece is we're teaching them to live victoriously. What does that look like? Are we extending grace? Because if we are, then that's going to inspire transformation. Again, and that transformation piece has to be something that says that we're a constant learner ourselves. So am I being transformed myself daily, weekly, monthly, yearly? Or am I just hoping to get by every day and hope people see Christ in me and maybe they might be transformed? So, brought up this big word that says that if we're called to do this, I thought I saw the word in there earlier of encourage, hold accountable, listen to one another, and love unconditionally. The word love is up there, but to love unconditionally. And that means pretty much everyone. But what we tend to do is we pick and choose who we want to love and who gets our love. So with that, it brought up the LGBT community because of how, one, myself treated them, and to take it a step further, how the church has treated them. And I kept thinking, the first order theology that I was taught just didn't make sense all of a sudden. We're called to love unconditionally. As we go and research why this community is just kind of being shoved aside and unloved and unwanted, it didn't make sense. You know, so I remember looking and going, that next step is the deliberative of theology that says, now what am I going to do with this newfound information? How am I going to really research and see, what does unconditional love mean? You know, does that mean kind of shaming people into loving Christ or shaming people into the kingdom? Or am I just going to love them unconditionally where they are, listen, because we're all good at trying to fix people. We're coaches, let's be honest, we want to fix people. But are we really listening? And so with that, I said, okay, well, I'm going to do something about it. So my wife and I just started reading books, talking to people, talking to our pastor at our church, challenging kind of our church. You know, there's a fear that's involved there, especially when you get involved in this piece of ministry, I'm being honest. And then you're saying, well, let's take it a step further. If I'm really going to be transformed, let's like meet and talk and get to know, you know, the local LGBT community that are Christians. You know, we find out like how they feel they've been treated. And again, it was a huge eye-opening, and it still is an eye-opening experience. But it reminded me, does that mean I'm done? It reminded me, I love Shawshank Redemption, the movie. There's a little 2-minute clip in there, and I'm going to play that, and we're going to be done in the next 2 minutes. But this is...
Flip your picture switch, yeah.
It says... So,
Ellis Lloyd Redding, if I'll say you served 40 years of a life sentence, you feel you've been rehabilitated? Rehabilitated? Well, now let me see. No, I don't have any idea what that means. Well, it means you're ready to rejoin society. I know what you think it means. To me, it's just a made-up word. Politicians, young fellas like yourself can wear a suit and a tie, have a job. Am I sorry for what I did? There's not a day goes by I don't feel regret. Not because I'm in here, because you think I should. I look back on the way I was then, long gone. This old man is all that's left. I gotta live with that. Rehabilitated. It's just a bullshit word. So you go on and stamp your form, Sonny, and stop wasting my time. Because to tell you the truth, I don't give a shit.
And there you have it. Why do I show this? Because again, it just reminds me of like what I thought and who I was and where I want to see it there. So again, to just close, I mean, it kind of reminded me, yeah, I can't go back, but it was like, what did I do and how did I treat people? Yeah, now what am I going to do with this transformation? And so I was just reminded, God calls us to be in a relationship with Him and with others, to serve Him, to serve others. And again, the most important thing, the thing that I've learned is like unconditional love. What does that mean? It's not our job to change people. It is God's job. It's our job to love them. So the reminder, at least that I've figured out, is like transformation is a journey. It wasn't like something we did and we're done doing. Transformation is like a journey, you know? And so the kind of the question is like, what are you struggling with? And how are you seeking to right things that may be wrong? And if any of you want to come and chat with me over the last 3 years of what my wife and I have learned, I'd love to have coffee. Thank you.
I think how to follow on that. Mike and I have had a similar journey, and I'm not sure what he said as I ran out to go get the grill to stop. But one of the things I've learned in my journey, and I think I've said this here before, is we're called to love your neighbor as you love yourself, which I think is probably the hardest commandment in all of Scripture, because I know how to love myself really well. I've got to love Victor Santa Cruz the way I love me. Not that Victor's unlovable. I'm not saying that. I'm just telling you there.
I've been told that often.
But what I've learned in that is that I am to be in relationship with him, with anyone. Undesirable athletes, desirable athletes. Love them and bring them to, and develop a relationship that brings them to the point of the empty tomb. And at the empty tomb, I kind of step back, because it's the Holy Spirit's job to convict, not mine. My job is to love in relationship. And it's the Holy Spirit's job to convict. And in that conviction and the power of the empty tomb is where the transformation happens. So we enter into relationships. Some of them can be really hard and tough and difficult. People we don't like. But we got to love them like we love ourselves. And as we get on that journey, as Mike says, it takes time. It takes time to transform. And we hopefully can be in a journey that brings them to that empty tomb. And it's at that empty tomb where they've got to wrestle with, who is this Jesus who overcame death, who died for me, who lives now? And what does that mean in my life? I asked Mike to speak on transformation because the Mike Barnett who walked in onto this campus at age 18 and the one who walked off at age 22, there was some transformation there. And I didn't get a first-hand look at it, but when I talked to people like Jerry Franson and Jim Milhon and Cliff Hamlin, guys who had great impact upon Mike, they talked about the transformation in Mike's life. And I think he is a testimony of what we are hoping to achieve today for the kingdom. So Mike, thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. Let's talk a little bit. All of you, I believe, Emily, did we do everybody? All of you have received this book. This is our APU athletic sub-branding book. All the head coaches participated in a survey, it's been a year and a half ago now, with a group from Colorado, and then they came in and we met in President's Dining Room to kind of go over the findings of that survey. And what this is a sub-branding book on athletics that aligns with the university's branding. And it's something I want you to become familiar with as you travel, as you might fly or on a bus to your games. I'd love for you to read this, know it, understand it, and let it become the language of our recruiting. Of what do we say to young men and women who are interested in coming to Azusa Pacific, who come onto our campus, and they say, man, I really like this campus. And then we drive home even more so what we're about. Because we really are about transformation. We really are about giving you an experience. It's really going to change your life. And it's something you're going to carry with you into your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s. You're going to be thinking about back to Azusa Pacific Athletics. As I look out at this year as it's coming up, and as we've started to look, I look at some of the teams, and we've got depth coming out of our ears in some of our programs. And I think there's going to be some really, really good seasons for some of our teams this year. I think a lot of it has to go back to the recruiting that's gone on and how we have positioned and messaged ourselves about this is a place where things happen differently for you. And where young men and women say, forget Division I want to be a part of what's going on here because this is really different and powerful. This sub-branding book speaks to that. And what I'd love for you guys to do is to read through it and begin to use some of the common language. There were 4 components, and it's kind of, some of it ties back to our mission statement. 4 components of the sub-branding book that can become the language of our recruiting. Is that we, for the student athletes come here, we're going to prepare them to lead and hopefully have them willing to follow. We're going to be mentoring the complete athlete. Remember, we spent a lot of time, we talked about that, and I appreciate some of you who challenged me on that. Hey, I can't disciple every single one of my athletes, but we can develop a mentoring program for our athletes as well. And so we're going to mentor them as best we can and bring in others to help mentor alumni, former coaches, staff people, faculty people here on this campus, support people to mentor our athletes and the students that we're working with. We're going to be united in achieving more. We're going to do this together. This is about being part of a team, being something bigger than us. I think today's young student, very socially active, wants to be a part of something bigger than just themselves. I think they probably saw that in their parents, which is my generation. Maybe saw the shallowness and emptiness of that. Today's student wants to be part of something bigger than themselves. They're going to get that here at Azusa Pacific. And also, we're going to inspire character through an intentional process. Kind of goes back to what Mike was talking about. We're going to be intentional in trying to transform them and give them a life experience. So, all of you have one of these. Begin to mark it up, begin to read it. Let's dialogue about this. This is not just a book to put on our shelf and to not talk about it again. I would love for this to be a lunch conversation. I'd love for there to be challenges and questions about what's in here. The first part of it is the survey part that the coaches spoke into. You'll see some things in there that's not that we're supposed to talk about how we feel like we aren't respected here on campus, because it does say that. And now we're supposed to go out and talk about we're small college athletics, but that's what it says in here. The back part of this is really the foundational piece. The front part is what you head coaches spoke to the group and what they wanted to make sure they communicated back to you is this is what they're hearing about athletics. But the last part is who we want to be as our aspirational part. So, all of you should have this, and I will welcome dialogue on this and dialogue with each other about it. This is going to be probably a living, breathing document that we're going to also reference quite a bit in terms of understanding who we are and what our niche is and what makes us so different compared to anybody else. This is a great place. I had a chance on Saturday night, the football game, walked the sideline with the recruits when they were out there. Had a chance to meet one of the basketball recruits that was here over the weekend, and he said, this is a greatly different place than you'll ever experience. You come here, some great things are going to happen in your life, and you're going to see life a lot differently. And that's so true. We may not have all the bells and whistles that other schools have, but man, we've got people. And we've got people who love and people who dive into relationship, people who challenge, people who hold you accountable, people who love you. And people, when you're done, you're going to walk out and say, man, I am a different person. I've got a direction. I've got a place that I'm going. I know who I am. That's what we do so well. I want us to talk about that, particularly when we're out there recruiting. Okay, let's talk a little bit about some business that's going on. Update you on some financial aid. I thought Heather's not here. I was hoping Heather would be here. She's not. Some financial aid and some budgeting. Athletic scholarships. We've got a 200 student shortfall in terms of enrollment for this year. You've heard me talk about the universities had to shave $3 million out of its budget. We have already done our share. I want to thank those coaches who I approached privately and willingly forfeited some of their budget for us to be part of that. But with that, I also just got word this week that we need to be careful how we scholarship moving forward. I will tell you this, we still have $390,000 worth of scholarship that has been unused for 16-17. Many of you in here are holding some reserves for spring athletes. You may do that. If you are still recruiting and wanting to bring people into the spring, do that. If you are wanting to hold on to some money for summer school, I need you by next Thursday. What is it? That's October 6th. I want you to email me how much money you think you need out of your current budget, remaining scholarship dollars, that you would want to use for summer money. What I'm saying up here and what this bullet says, we don't want to dole out money because, hey, someone's a great person, they had a great season, and they're not getting any university grant money, and so here's an extra $5,000 for you. We don't want to do that, partly because of the shortfall in enrollment, and because we have already spent the budgeted scholarship dollars for the university, not we in athletics, the university has already spent their budgeted dollars. Any more scholarship dollars we spend is going to be above and beyond budget. And the university is pretty tight right now on their finances because of the enrollment shortfall. Does that make sense, what I'm saying to you? So, you can still recruit for the spring and bring some people in. You may spend money to keep somebody that we know we're going to lose if they don't have more. What I don't want is rewarding scholarship dollars to be spent. Does that make sense? Okay? And this is just a season we're going through. We did this 2 years ago. We did not have to do it last year, but something we had to do 2 years ago. And then also, coaches, head coaches, get me what you think you want to spend for summer money out of your remaining budgeted dollars if you still have some remaining. Okay? Because I'm working with the university, say, we still want to help young men and women graduate on time, and we'd love for them to stick around here in the summer. Talk a little bit more about the budget. We are looking at enrollment next year that's going to be equivalent to what our enrollment was back in 2010. It's just the way life is right now. It's going to be probably under 5,000 next year. And so with that being said, the university is making market adjustments. All private schools in California are dealing with this. This is making hay right now for the CSU and the UC schools, the state schools. Private schools are all challenged with their enrollment. And what our administration is saying is, hey, we got to make some market adjustments. What is it that today's kid really wants to study? The thing I appreciate about people like Vicki Bowden and DDA and some of those people, they're working to bring new programs in here. We just brought in criminal justice, I think, 2 years ago, and starting an engineering program. They're finding out what's the market out there that students want to study, and let's develop those programs and let's get students in here. But in the meantime, that means there's a market adjustment, and we're struggling with, we're just being careful with our enrollment. But know this, we're probably going to fall under 5,000 next year. We know that, and so we're working with it. Now, that all to say, this year, our operating budget for all sports was $1.79 million, $1.8 million. I've been asked to try to certainly not ask for more money and cut if possible. I can't cut. But because we're going to have fewer and shorter road trips next year, for instance, there's no BYU Hawaii that some of you have to play. There's some of you, we are sending 9 teams to Hawaii this year. Next year, 4. So I can take some of the money and move it around. We will still, my hope is that we will still have $1.79 million in operating budget for next year. And I'm going to move it around. I will tell you your budget dollars probably sometime around February or March. But as I look at it, we're going to be able to cover the officials' fee hike, the Hawaiian airline hike, dues hikes, hotel fees that will probably go up as well. I think we're going to be able to cover all that and have a comfortable budget for all of you next year. So I just want to let you know that I'm working on next year's budget already. Sometime in February, early March, I will give you the numbers, and I'm hoping this year that we can lock in and say this is absolutely going to be it. I appreciate the start that we have. I think we're doing a pretty good job financially already from what little I've been able to see into the new year. But I appreciate you being conscientious without necessarily rating the experience for our student athletes. I appreciate the stewardness that you're showing with our finances. And so, any questions about what I said about scholarships or budgeting? All good with that? Okay. Let's see, what else do I got? NCAA legislation. We will probably next month go over the 2017 NCAA legislation. It's getting fuller all the time. In fact, I just got the new publication yesterday of all the legislation that's out there. If you don't mind, I will probably email you all the legislation, and I know you would love to read it. But I'm going to get it into your hands, and you can do what you want in terms of reading it. But Shelby's going to take us through an exercise where we go over all the legislation. It'd be great if you read it ahead of time, just to be aware, and so that you have an opinion. I'd like to know your opinion on some of the issues I don't know where I fall on, and I'd love to hear how it impacts the coaches and whatnot. Okay. More. National Car Rental Agreement. Diane Baruth, our business manager, has gone out and entered into an agreement, has secured an agreement with National Car Rental, and I was the first one to test it. I tested it 2 weeks ago. Loved it. I'm an Emerald Club member, and I walked into Midway Airport in Chicago, and I walked out, and they said, Mr. Pine, since you're an Emerald Club member, you can have any car you want for $55. I saw a Camaro, I saw a real nice pickup, saw a Jeep Cherokee. I turned to my son, which one do you want? He says, let's take the Jeep Cherokee, and I had a Jeep Cherokee for 3 days. It was nice, all for $55 a day, and all I did was just hop in the car and drive out. And didn't have to do anything. We now have an agreement with Azusa Pacific Athletics with National Rental Car. You can see up there, Diane is going to include with our minutes greater details. But I would encourage, if you want to rent a minivan or a car on any of your trips, and you can do it for personal or for business, so far so good. I'm using it again tomorrow night. I'm flying up to Portland. I'm going to use National again and see how it works. But we have entered into an agreement. You see what's there. It's available to all of our coaches and assistant coaches. And as you see, you can be 21 years old. So Myra, there you go. You can drop it. The rate is, you have to book an intermediate car, which is typically $55 a day, but you can get all the way up to something bigger and better and get a Camaro if you want. So anyway, Diane, anything else? I'm not going to go bullet by bullet, but anything else that we need to know about it? You will give them details in our minutes.
Yes, I will. I will send you some attachments that has more explicit directions on national or enterprise, because they are in one company. The big thing is that you have to book the intermediate size in order to have a choice when you get there.
Yeah. National, Enterprise, and Alamo are all under the same company. So this is not a mandate. You don't have to do it. It's recommended. And so far, so good from my standpoint.
One
yes.
more thing.
Yes.
Is that we have also found out to verify with Gary, he was having a hard time getting a vehicle that he wanted. So if ever you are looking for vehicles and you can't find it, then you email this Elizabeth Tucker, her email address on there, and she sometimes can perform miracles.
Give detail. I was flying to Midway in Chicago. Midway said we have no cars. Nothing. Nobody. In fact, I checked them with budget and dollar, no cars. So we called, we went back to National when they first told me they didn't have cars. They said, oh, we'll take care of you. So they found
And
me.
they found it.
In fact, gave me choices too. So it's a nice deal. Anyway, so far so good. I like it. I would recommend it. And you're welcome to do it. You'll get details here in the coming day. PacWest meetings are coming up. Next week I will be gone in San Francisco with PacWest meetings. Just a couple of items we're going to be working on that I think may affect you. With the news, it's now public. Dixie State is leaving the RMAC. You may choose to go schedule Dixie State if you want. Just know this, they will not count as an in-region game because they are not a contiguous region. They are not connected to California. We have to go through Nevada and Arizona to get to Utah. So you may play Utah State in non-conference games beginning in the fall of 2018, but we in the Pac-West now have to figure out how we're going to schedule and what the loss of Dixie State does to our schedule. So we're going to work on that. And also we're going to begin to discuss conference championships. As you know, we have a conference championship tournament for men's and women's basketball. Coaches, Dave and Jason, Paul, Terry, and Chris, you should have all received emails from Bob Hogue wanting to survey you about the possibility of a conference tournament, correct? And we returned them? We want to know how bad the coaches want conference tournaments. If they want them, we are going to try to figure out how to financially do it, not all at one time. We're going to piecemeal it over the course of probably 5-6 years to try to have conference tournaments. We know this is one of the reasons that Dixie State left, among many reasons, but one of them is they like the idea of conference tournaments that the RMAC has in all of theirs. So we are surveying the coaches, and we're going to begin to discuss about having conference tournaments, postseason conference tournaments where the AQ is up for grabs in that. And so we'll keep you abreast.
Gary.
Yes.
Speaking of Dixie leaving, is our budget's gonna decline based off that, or
I-
are we not saying anything?
We're not saying anything. Yeah. So, not saying anything. So, yeah, that will help us in 2018 as well. But obviously, you're gonna have to find games to replace that. I'm hopeful that contests for the CC2A will continue to open up and we can develop a continued stronger relationship. I believe that's it for me. Before we go to April, let me hand off for 2 or 3 minutes to Shelby for some compliance. Yes, Justin?
I just had a question about, you're talking about the business. What's the timeline on the development position?
We're hoping to have someone, I was really hoping to have someone by January 15th.
And is the process happening leading up to that?
Yes, job description is done. I have found out from Advancement that the job description has not been edited. I just found that out earlier this week. A little disappointed because I gave that to them about 3 weeks ago. But in fairness to Advancement, I'm sorry, I should throw them under the bus. They had the board meetings coming up, and they had some pretty significant issues going on with the board meeting. But our desire, and I talked to both Corbin and Nora about a week and a half ago. I said, I really want this person on January 15th. And they felt like we're still on path to do that. So my desire is to have someone here January 15th, and we would begin fundraising. I need to say this too. There are probably rumblings out there about soccer complex and the build-out. Yes, there are dialogues going on. There are still private dialogues at this point. But we are looking at a build-out of the soccer complex to help us with locker room facilities. But that's not for public consumption outside of this room, because we're still developing the fundraising strategy for that, and we're still looking for the lead gift. We have our eyes on someone. I will say this, it's about an $8 million project. And so that takes someone with some serious means to do that. So I will say, yes, we are in conversation and working with an architect and having conversation with Advancement about development of the soccer stadium. But that's not really to go beyond this room. And if you hear people just say, there's talk, but we don't know much about it. Does that make sense? Any other questions? You good? Did I answer it? Shelby?
Okay, really quickly, we did have a violation since the last time we met. We had an impermissible tryout that happened. The coach was fantastic, actually stopped the tryout when they realized what they had done wrong. So just a reminder, as you guys are doing tryouts, please make sure you get that paperwork in to Callie or myself so that way we can approve that. We like that 48 hours in advance if you can. Reminders about FAFSA and our application here at APU. APU's application is open for any recruits that you guys are getting and talking to and having them commit to APU. Please get those names to Carly as soon as possible so we can start tracking them. She already sent you guys all a spreadsheet that she's starting for our 17-18 class. Additionally, FAFSA opens up this Saturday. So if you have any students who are applying to APU, go ahead and start that conversation of having them apply with their FAFSA as well. With that, on FAFSA and scholarship dollars, probably about in a couple of weeks, Heather or Chris Weeks will be sending you guys probably your budgets for next year, which is crazy because we just started the school year. But we will need to start getting your guys' scholarship. For anyone who's doing the early signing period, we'll need your guys' submissions so that way we can get those rolling so we can get those out at the beginning of November. So be on the lookout for that. I will let you guys know when I hear a little bit more as I talk with Heather. Last week, you guys did a great job on study hall with all of your teams. We only had a few kids that were delinquent, so I appreciate that. You guys have been doing a fantastic job of making sure that your students are doing that, so thank you very much. I appreciate that, and so do my graduate assistants as well. Another piece that we have to have turned in, grade checks are actually due not this Monday, but the following Monday. What is that, October 10th? Okay, so grade checks are due October 10th. Your student athletes were all emailed on Monday and were sent this the grade check forms, so if you guys can have them start filling those out and get those submitted by the 10th, we'd appreciate that. Also, thanks for your student athletes, all of our freshmen and transfers that started at APU this semester were sent an email by the university and by my office reminding them that they have to do 2 trainings. They have to do a Title IX sexual harassment training, and they also have to do an alcohol EDU training. Is that right, Luke?
Yeah.
Okay. So they need to complete that because they're not going to be able to register for their classes until they get that done. If you would like one of my graduate assistants to come out and talk to you, or myself to come out and talk to your team or your new students about that, I'd be more than happy to set that up, just so that way they can have some face-to-face conversation and reminder about that. Last thing that I need to talk about is CityLinks. CityLinks is coming up this weekend and next weekend. From my understanding, each student in their first year seminar class has been assigned a day, whether it's this Saturday, October 1st, or next Saturday, October 8th. For my fall sports, I'm going to reach out to you guys and figure out which of your students are supposed to go which days and if they're going to miss. We are working on a backup date for that, but we don't have one kind of set in stone yet, so we're working on that. It'll probably be an afternoon in November sometime, like during the week as opposed to on a weekend. So I, or my graduate assistants with a group of us, will probably come out to your practices for fall sports to see who has what day, so that way we can make sure we organize it appropriately. Additionally, your students should be conversating with their professors if they're not going to be able to make it, so that way the professor at least knows that they will not be there for that day, and then we'll take care of the back end piece of that as far as that's concerned. For anyone else, for any of my winter and spring sports, if you have any students that are going to miss, they need to work with their professor if they've scheduled flights home or if they've done anything else like that. They need to work with their professor directly to see what their professor can do for them. Unfortunately, we don't have too much authority with some of that stuff. So probably in the next, either today or tomorrow, I'm going to ask if I can come out to your practices to see who's going to miss CityLinks for my fall sports. So just be on the lookout for that. Any questions or anything that anyone has, Kevin? Okay. Like I said, be on the
I
lookout
have a question. Are
yes.
you guys gonna, I know our students are supposed to talk to their professors themselves, but do they have an excuse for this based off just their word?
So Spencer Green, our male graduate assistant, is actually doing the CityLinks setup. So he's working for us in CityLinks up right now, which is fantastic. So he's been able to communicate some of those things. That's why we're gonna get a list of everybody and we're gonna hand it to Spencer, and Spencer's gonna disperse that to the professors that do have those issues and let them know that they are missing for an athletic event, which is for university business essentially. Any other questions about CityLinks or anything else? Okay, like I said, be on the lookout for your budgets for next year from Heather, which sounds crazy to me, but it's that time of year. So, thank you,
Thanks,
everyone.
Shelby. April.
Okay, happy Wednesday. Weird Sock Wednesday if you hadn't got the memo. I don't normally wear socks like this, but anyway, we're trying to have a little fun in the middle of the week. Just some reminders, we would like you to let us know about your ADHD athletes, the ones that you know, and then we've been working with them to get the correct paperwork, so Gary's going to help us with that. Because long story short, most of your staff should have emailed you, but if they get tested by the NCAA, they're taking an ADHD medication and they don't have the proper paperwork, which is quite extensive, they will lose a year. And that's the last thing we want happening to any of your athletes. So that's that. Just a reminder on the mental health care side that we've received submissions by a number of you, but if you have one of your student athletes you're concerned about, they're going through emotional things, you know, transition to college, they're having issues in classes, they have family stuff going on, you can send us an email, let us know, we'll let the care team know. What that generally looks like is they either have the campus pastors, the counseling center, or an RA or an RD check in with them a little bit more often. So if there's someone that you want help, that we want to, you know, gather the troops to help support them so it's not all on you. So just a reminder. And then obviously you can walk someone over to the counseling center, and I've already done that once this semester. Really helps support the athletes. So I know you guys know that it's a good resource, but just as a reminder. And then we do have the two performance psych guys, both Doug Kroll and Paul Seville. have offered to continue their performance psychology counseling, so you can, if you have any athlete that you want, send them to me. And the reminder, the reason you send them through me is that A, I can keep their schedule, and then B, it doesn't count as CARA. If you kind of suggest they go, then it can kind of count more as a countable thing, and we want the less things countable for you as possible, obviously. Nutrition update, as I let you know last year that they do have the protein shakes. They have them on both campuses now in both coffee shops. So the Hillside Grounds and the corner, the cafe, they can use their Cougar Bucks. And so just a reminder that's there. Along with that, Julie Negron is the University Counseling Center, or University Nutritionist Counselor. So a number of you have used her as a resource to talk to your team. So if you want her to come again, raise your hand if you've had her speak to your team. Okay, so you guys can talk to those people if you want feedback on how it went. So there's team counseling, and there's individual counseling. So I think it's Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they can make an appointment. So if a person wants an individual plan written up, then they can go to her for that. So just want to remind you of those resources. And one of the things we needed to educate you on is concussions. A little late, so we'll skip that. Basically, all our concussions see a physician. They are educated annually, and you all are expected to be educated annually, so here you go. We have our education. You guys know our baseline testing, which takes up, unfortunately, a big chunk of physicals. So we get their background information, we get their signs and symptoms, that's what the SS means. We do the balance test, the infamous balance test. If you're really having a rough day, come by my office one day and I'll show you a video of our top 10 worst balance people, and it'll brighten your day. Actually quite entertaining. Ellie Farrar has reviewed all 450 of our athletes. We should have her make a ranking, but I think that would be unprofessional, so we'll try to post mine. Then they do the impact test, and then some of you guys know the BSI-18 is a test that they do that develops emotional distress. And so just as a reminder that when the athletes fill this out, question number 17, I know it well, says that in the last 7 days, have you felt any of these things? And the question number 7 or 17, I don't know, says thoughts of ending your life. So if they hit moderately, or on the Likert scale, they hit a 2 or more, I get an alert, and then I have to follow with them within hours, or I get a trillion emails. And so some of you I can't communicate to. So know that when I call you, some of it may be that your athlete just put all 2s or all 3s on everything. And sometimes we've actually been able to identify some kids that are having emotional distress and be able to reach out to them a little bit more. So if I ever communicate to you on the BSI-18, that's what it's for. Then obviously if they get a concussion, we do testing, and then we have a whole return to play protocol. This is the handout. What is it that we give the athletes? What is a concussion? How do you prevent it? What are the symptoms of a concussion? So we go over that with them. So we'll just briefly go with you. It's a blow to the head from contact to another player, or a hard surface, or a bat, any type of collision. Change the way your brain normally works, ranging from mild to severe. We don't grade concussions anymore on the front end because we have no idea. We really kind of grade them on the tail end. So if you're asking like how bad is it, I'll tell you when they return to play. And if it took 5 days versus 3 weeks, then that's how we grade it, because we just never know how someone's going to respond. I've seen people get knocked unconscious, return quicker than people that took a hit in some fashion and then continued to play. So that's the big thing for us. Presents itself different for each athlete. I know that for your athletes, I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir, but there's a little bit of a shame factor with concussions because no one can see it, and they don't feel like it's a real injury. So, and it also is associated with depression, so it's a compounding event. Happening anywhere. Obviously, we get kids sometimes that run into pools texting, they get concussions, so we may be calling you about those. What can we do to prevent? You guys are the biggest part of this in teaching of technique. So when we talk to the athletes about listening to your coaches on technique, that's basically what that is, practicing and perfecting the skills of your sport. Here's the symptoms: amnesia, confusion, headache, loss of consciousness, possibly, balance problems or dizziness, double or fuzzy vision, feeling sluggish, foggy, or groggy, which is why we get a baseline, because some of your athletes are like that normally, so we want to know what's different than normal. Feeling unusual, irritable, like we said, transforming those really irritable athletes is, you need to know what their number is irritably, normally. concentration or memory problems, slowed reaction time, sensitivity to light or noise, which a lot of it has to do with, we do make quite a number of accommodations for chapel because chapel's so loud. And then exercise or activities that involve a lot of concentration, studying, working on a computer, playing video games may cause these symptoms to get worse. This is a sheet we sent home, and I know it's so small you can't see it, but we want to know that every one of your athletes gets a sheet that goes home with a non-concussed roommate to make sure they're doing the right things. It's a list of symptoms. We put our cell number there, we get their cell number of their roommate so that we can communicate. And the big thing that I want to remind you is this right here, is that it's not common anymore to wake people up. If you don't wake them up anymore, you actually want them to rest. Resting is part of the healing of their brain. So I want to make sure they're breathing. So as long as they're breathing, then they're fine. Just let them keep sleeping. This is our graded return to play, so it goes from no activity until they have all those symptoms resolved. So we do redo all those tests to make sure they're back to normal. Then they'll start with light aerobic exercise, then we get more sports specific, then we get into non-contact training drills, then we get into full contact practice. So Chris, we can slam your volleyball players together on that day. And then we get back to full return to play. So just know that on any concussion, it's going to take at least 6 days to get through all those steps, and we have to go through all those steps. And then we'll have seen our team physician at some point in that process. The last thing I'll say on concussions, and Ben's going to talk about sickle cell real quick, is that any of you that have high school age students, I have no idea what your high school offers, but I am super happy to run them through our concussion baseline testing so that you have an idea that they get a concussion, what normal is, because you can run all those tests when they return, but if you don't know where they started, it's really hard to know if they should go back. So just let myself or the athletic trainer that you work with know, and we're super happy to run your kids through that. And Jamin, who also has full socks on today.
Not that converted. So, I'm just going to talk a little bit about sickle cell trait. We have a little bit higher number of athletes with sickle cell traits this year than we've had the last couple years, and we also haven't really educated you much on this. Except some informal stuff since we made the transition to NCAA and had to have this as part of our requirements. So I'm going to quickly go through just a little bit of this. So just a little bit about what sickle cell trait is. So your red blood cells in your body are normally circular shape, so that you can so they can have a hemoglobin attached to them, transfer that oxygen throughout the body, and so you can have normal functioning to your muscles and all the different parts of your body. When you have sickle cell trait, you have one gene of the sickle cell anemia, and it normally will not have any issues. So that it's not something that is going to have any problem. You're not necessarily going to know unless you're tested or you've had an event. But the red blood cells will can in certain situations get sickle, or they can turn into a different shape where they have they have a half moon shape. So so why it's important to understand who has the trait is there are there's been reports since 2000 of 10 deaths in football and 1 in track related to sickle cell, someone who had sickle cell trait. So there's a little bit of numbers here about who's a little more apt to get it, where it's a little more prevalent, what different heritages, but basically the most common people come from an ancestry of Africa, Middle East, Mediterranean, or the Caribbean or India. But that doesn't necessarily exclude all the other ancestries. So just because they're not one of those, you may still have an athlete that does get it. Like I said, we currently have 8 student athletes with the trait right now, which is a little higher than we've had in the past. But it does not disqualify them. So if somebody gets the test and we have them go, that we find out that they're positive, it doesn't disqualify them. It just means that we're going to make sure that everybody who's involved with them knows, and we are going to train you so you know how to make sure to keep an eye on them so that we can keep them safe in the event that they have the trait. Was that a question?
That was my question. If the coaches know, the coaches
Yes.
know.
So
Thank you.
once we find out that they're positive, we will notify the coaches, and they're going to go get that information. We'll the coaches that have those athletes, they already know that for this year, and have gone through some additional education with us and our team doctor as well. So this is a little bit too scientific, probably, so we can skip through this, but basically it just creates a logjam when you have a sickle cell effect. So you have, when you have a sickling event, the blood cells start to clog up the arteries, and don't allow the oxygen to continue to move through the body, so then you can have symptoms, which is termed this ischemic rhabdomyolysis. So if you've ever heard of that, or if you hear that term, that's what kind of is happening. Usually will occur within the first 2 to 3 minutes of high intense exertional exercise. So high intensity with repetitions that will kind of create that signaling event. It doesn't usually occur, longer into the session. It can, but if it happens early in that first 2 to 3 minutes of high intensity and high repetition exercise, that's probably when you're going to notice it most. And it is a true medical emergency, as we mentioned, because it can lead to kidney and heart failure. So, if you've heard about it a little bit, heat illness and cramping is very similar to a sickling event. So here's just kind of a list of some of the differences. So you'll notice that muscle pain and weakness of the immediate onset are similar to cramping, but there's not any visible or palpable if you kind of touch the muscle. It's not going to feel like that really hard, cramped up muscle that you would have when you have a heat illness situation. You'll also notice that the athlete will probably just kind of slump over, as opposed to, we've all seen somebody cramp, they kind of stiffen up and they grab at the muscle that's cramping up. It's going to be a little bit more, they just kind of slump over, as opposed to the other for heat cramping. Again, it usually occurs with an intense workout. It might be associated with temperature, it might not be. Temperature and humidity aren't always a factor in it. It will often occur in the first couple days or first week of training, as they're kind of going through and their body is starting to transition in and start to get through all the different transitions or the new training that they're doing. And unlike cardiac arrest, athletes will still be able to talk, so it's not going to be a CPR event. They'll be able to talk to you. It will even occur if the athlete is well hydrated, whereas with the heat illness and stuff, that's obviously something where we usually know that they can be caused because of dehydration. And then another big one is this altitude. Altitude can have an impact. So anytime we're traveling, if you know somebody on your team has it, and you know you're going to be traveling to even altitude of about 2,000 feet higher than what we normally are. So we're not very high, but I know where we're at. So they'll have back pain. Kind of finish through this. Again, the NCAA requires that all student athletes do have some form of test or sign a waiver, but we require that they have the test, and we pay for it, so they don't have any excuses. Running out of time, so these are just some consensus statements from the National Athletic Trainers Association. We can look at that more another time when we have more time, but basically just take-home message here, some acute care management stuff. If you do have a situation where you start to recognize it, check vital signs. You won't have to really worry about administering high flow oxygen, but that's something that if it's available would be a benefit. Try to cool the athlete if you can. Get the athlete to get their just monitor them for the vital signs, and obviously call 911 if they start to deteriorate. And then once EMS arrives or whatnot, then you want to make sure you let them know that the doctors could expect maybe this explosive rhabdomyolysis and grave metabolic complications. Kind of fancy words, but basically that might be a sickling event where they're going to have significant effects of their muscles. And last time we talked to you about the emergency action plan, so just get be aware of that, know where your emergency action plan is, so that we can have all these practices put into place so that we're taking care of the athletes that potentially could have issues. So that's it.
That it? Any questions for April or for Ben on what they talked about? I thank you for your patience. It's something we have to do by NCAA standards and NATA requirements, so thank you. Last thing, for being so patient and listening, I have 4 tickets to tonight's Angels A's game for anybody who wants it. If I don't hear from anybody by noon, I'm going to release it, but I've got 4 tickets to tonight's Angels A's game.